एक सेकेंड। व्हाट आई एम सेइंग कि आपका जो रजिस्ट्रेशन वाले पेज है जहाँ पे फीस लिखा है ना, फी INR 5,000 प्लस GST, राइट? फिर उसके नीचे इंडिविजुअल्स फ्रॉम स्कूल्स और कॉलेजेस, ये जो है ना अगेन बोल्ड है, इसको आप नॉर्मल कर दो, अनबोल्ड कर दो। फॉर इंटरनेशनल पार्टिसिपेंट्स ओनली बोल्ड में रहेगा, बाकी नीचे वाला अनबोल्ड रहेगा। ऐसे क्या सब बोल्ड है तो पता नहीं चल रहा है क्या? हाँ, सब मर्ज हो रहा है पढ़ने में। और जो मेन पेज है कोर्स वाला पेज, वहां पर भी इंटरनेशनल वाला रेट डालना पड़ेगा, है ना? हाँ हाँ हाँ, ठीक है। बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, ठीक है। ओके। Let me give it a chance. Let's see. Whenever you plan to have today tomorrow, I know it's back for you.
Namaskar, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to all of you in this thematic session on integrating climate change in education systems in India. At the onset, we welcome each one of you to this interesting session, and we hope that this will offer wonderful learnings to you all in terms of integrating climate change in our education systems. As we all know, the urgency to act on climate change is spilling over all the sectors. And the education sector is one of the sectors that offers biggest opportunity of passing on the knowledge, the skills and attitudes to the learners and the younger generation to meaningfully act on climate change. This session has been jointly organized by Center for Environmental Education, Ahmedabad, as well as UNESCO Multi-Sectoral Regional Office, New Delhi. It's my great privilege to introduce you all Ms. Joyce Payon, Chief of Education Sector, UNESCO New Delhi, who will be moderating this session. And we have a number of panelists in this session who will take you through the various aspects of integrating climate change education through curriculum integration, policy level initiatives, as well as various local and state level case examples that will be put up during this session. So without much ado, I hand over the floor to Joyce to conduct this session. Over to you, Joyce. Thank you.
Dhanyabad, Sweta. So good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all refreshed with some lunch. Not too much, though, because we don't want the brain not to start functioning. I'm going to start quickly to introduce our panelists for the session on integrating climate change in education systems. Without much ado, of course, Mr. Kartikeya Sarabhai, who is the founder and director for Center for Environmental Education, India. Sir, if I can ask you to come to the floor. We have then my friend from UNICEF New Delhi, Ramachandra Rao Begur, education specialist with UNICEF here in New Delhi. We have Ms. Tushita Rawat, program manager, from Center for Science and Environmental Education. I believe I saw Ms. Rawat. Thank you. We also have some colleagues joining us online, and I see Olivia. Is that you, Olivia? Can you hear and see us?
Yes, I can see you. Thank you.
Right. Olivia is the Director of Education from FEE, Foundation for Environmental Education, joining us from Denmark. And then we have Hita. Hi, Hita.
Hello.
Good morning, I think,
Morning.
right? For you.
I'm here. I'm in India. Good afternoon.
Oh, you're in India. Right.
Yeah.
She is a youth activist and climate educator with Green Warriors in Pune. And so we will be asking a series of questions, one question for all of the panelists and then individual questions. And if I can just have some housekeeping rules. First, if you could turn off your mobile phones, if ever put it on silence, because it's going to be a very interesting conversations. We don't want it to be interrupted. And there will be question and answer portion later. So please do take notes and you can ask them later. So my name is Joyce Pawan, and some of you may have heard me earlier in the morning. I am Chief of Education with UNESCO New Delhi office, and we work together with all of our colleagues here, and very excited to start this conversation. So, dear colleagues, first and foremost, the first question would be to all of you, what, in your experience and based on your experience, what do you think are the issues and how do you think we can strengthen climate change education in schools and or higher education? Let me see if I can start from that side of the room. Ms. Rawat, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I work with Center for Science and Environment. It's a New Delhi-based research organization, and I am on the environment education unit there. So we essentially work with schools and colleges. And climate change education, of course, is a huge, huge focus area. Before I begin, I should tell you that we have a vibrant network of schools that we work with and colleges as well. And most of the insights and points that I'm going to share today come from my experiences with them and the experience of designing programs for our stakeholders. I would like to refer to this latest report by UNESCO, the GEM 2021 report, Getting Every School Climate Ready. It stated that of 100 countries around the world, 95% teachers believe that it's important to teach climate change education in classroom. But less than 40% teachers feel confident in doing so. So clearly the intent is there, but there's also a huge gap between the intent of teachers and what is actually happening in the classrooms, how climate change education actually plays out in the classroom. And more so if we talk about specifics of climate change. So broadly speaking, people still feel confident in taking climate change to classrooms. But if we get down to the specifics of it, the percentage still goes down. So how do we interpret this gap? In my opinion, one of the biggest struggles, if I have to put it in a line, is that climate change, our world, because of climate change, is changing too fast. And unfortunately, our pedagogy, the kind of content that we have for classroom is not changing as fast. And that is one of the biggest issues that I see, because climate change education should keep up with what is happening around us. But teachers feel that they do not have the appropriate resources, they do not have the appropriate support, and they do not have the appropriate knowledge also to take it to classrooms. We should not just jump to teaching climate change, but capacity building of teachers, their knowledge is equally important and should precede climate change education. So I think the need of the hour here is to build an education that provides collaborative and experiential learning opportunities to students. It should not be something that comes from above, but should be something that that is informed by their local scenarios, the issues that they're facing in their everyday lives. Every region has its own challenges when it comes to climate change, and that is what climate change education in essence should be able to address. Students should be able to come up with actions that they can take. So I think about the gap that I referred to, the means and resources to be able to reach that climate change education goal That is something that that we require today in order to address this problem of gap that we have. It's not a one size that fits all approach. Every region has its own issues. So climate change education should be flexible enough to incorporate those issues and address those issues and give students something concrete to work with. And climate change education as a concept will work on multiple levels. It will not just be about classrooms. So the discussion and the discourse also has to be divergent in that sense. I think capacity building of educators is really important in this scenario. Providing them with appropriate resources and teaching learning material is another very, very important aspect of it. And then, of course, what students learn in a classroom is again another important pillar of this. I would like to close what I'm trying to put forth here within anecdote. So we run a course on climate change education, especially for school teachers on Moodle. It's an open source learning platform. And before starting the course, we had a focus group discussion with our network teachers to understand what is it that they need. And unequivocally, our teachers felt that there's an increasing need for something that is progressive, resources that are that follow a progression of relevant climate change concepts that they can follow in classroom. They want to teach climate change in a classroom, but they're not sure of the topics and how they should be dealt with across grades. So I think having a graded system of climate change education where teachers have clarity on what they have to teach and how they have to teach, and before that, their own knowledge building is something that that is of importance here.
Thank you. Yes, because I have the microphone, I also have the power to stop people, I think, and I'm going to use that. But I'm going to have to say that everybody gets around 3 minutes, three minutes and a half to speak. And since we also have online colleagues, we will switch from real life and digital life. So Olivia, can I ask you that same question based on your experience? What do you think are the issues and how do you think we can strengthen climate change education in schools or in higher education? Over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, and it's an absolute privilege to be here representing the Foundation for Environmental Education with 100 member organisations and over 60,000 education institutions registered through our 4 educational programmes of Eco Schools, Learning About Forests, Young Reporters for the Environment and Eco Campus. Our overall objective is to empower young people through ESD pedagogies, working in dynamic ways to address their own priority challenges. As my colleague was just saying quite rightly, most important that we have an adaptable framework that any school or institution in any place is able to use in a dynamic way. While I think most of us in this room would agree that quality education is key to building the resilience against climate change, unfortunately, education systems still far from fulfilling their promise in this area. The UN's described a triple crisis of access, quality, and relevance in education. And meanwhile, education systems around the world are being increasingly impacted by the severity of climate change, meaning that for every step we take forward in terms of delivering quality education, climate and environmental change is bringing us 2 steps back. So from my perspective, whilst we have up till now always promoted an integrated approach to climate change education, which involves both mitigation and adaptation approaches in order to address climate change. Mitigation, I don't know if you would agree, I'd be interested to hear, up till now, mitigation has taken up most of the attention in schools and other institutions. Meanwhile, we have, as we've seen in recent months, tragically, more and more communities are experiencing increasingly severe climate change events with devastating impacts on their livelihoods and lives. And as part of our climate change strategy, we're aiming to scale up our work on climate change in school through the Greening Education Partnership, which will exponentially increase our reach in terms of mobilizing the Eco Schools programme towards the GEP's target of 50% accreditation of all institutions to a green schools programme. So as my colleague was just saying, tackling climate change requires a transformation in the way teaching and learning happens. And for this, supporting teachers with new understanding of the issues and the pedagogical approaches to engage their learners in multidisciplinary climate change action is key. So this year we've launched a new massive open online course, a MOOC, through our FEE Academy. This is entitled Climate Change Education from Knowledge to Action, and it's aimed at primary and middle school teachers to develop new scientific knowledge of climate change impacts, as well as the pedagogical tools they need in order to tackle immediate and context-specific issues in their classroom. So far we have 674 participants enrolled in this programme, and we're hoping to increase it as well as add new tools and content in order to create a new community of practitioners, teachers particularly, and scientists, so that we can start to provide the support and new ideas necessary. I see your hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia, for understanding the time constraints, but I'm sure we'll come back and learn more about the MOOC. Now I want to hand over to Begur from UNICEF. Please, sir, your answer.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. No, I know we have 3 minutes for that, but considering that 3 minutes, let me try to focus on 2 major challenges or issues and 3 opportunities that would exist where we can strengthen, in terms of one. I think, to me, one of the larger challenge is about how can we scale up with quality. Some of the things what we do pilot or integrate in some elements, or what we do, some major problem or challenge would be how can we do the same interventions at large scale and with quality. I think that's something which is very, very critical. The second aspect is about there are certain policies, there are certain guidelines which are getting evolved and are already there. But how can we put it into practice in such a way that there is more of knowledge, awareness, and also, it's implemented in a way which we want. I think that is something which probably we need to bridge the gap. Suppose if we are talking from a large level, national, state, the district and the block, and to the classroom practices. Now, how are we looking at that in an enabling environment that would get and also get integrated more into the classroom practices, which brings change in terms. Now, looking at what are the opportunities that exist or how do we can strengthen about it. As I said, I will talk on few things. One very, very important part I think I must mention is the opportunity that we have around the curriculum framework. There is this new national curriculum framework that has been enforced. You might know definitely on the National Policy on Education 2020 talks about 4 curriculum frameworks. One is in early childhood care and education. The second is around school education. The third is teacher education and the adult education. I think these are great opportunities for us to look at more specifically in terms of integration, and also as it gets translated at the state level, how this gets more nuanced at the state and further context in terms of doing that. I think this is something which we need to look at that much more, and an opportunity that exists, and do something which is very critical. The third thing within that as an opportunity is, I think what we are trying to now look in the educational system is, it's all largely geared towards learning outcomes as well as skills development. There are grade appropriate learning outcomes. There are skills that are being utilized. Now, at the end of the day, whether classrooms are providing that opportunity in terms of integrating these outcomes which are related to climate change, which we can look at translating in terms of more awareness, knowledge, and practice, and can we measure that? I think there is this opportunity which we need to build upon it, and we need to look at why I am saying this, because NCERT has already come up with this grade appropriate learning outcomes. I think we need to tag an opportunity. Third, but not the least, is about partnerships. I think there is a lot of awareness. There is now, we can see people coming together, in terms of climate action, climate justice. Now, how do we convene? How do we organize ourselves? How do we, make in such a way that we can build upon those activities and in an aligned and coherent way, also keeping the context in mind, the different disasters that exist. Or we talked about one size do not fit all, but the differential strategies that may be required, also making it happen at a large scale. Now I'll stop here and I come back with talk about some examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Begur. Next, I'd like to hear the opinions of Mr. Kartakia, please.
Thank you, Joyce. I think very good points have already been made, and I just sort of not go over them, because I think teachers being at the center of it, issues of scaling up, these are very true. And I think they're made. I think let me talk about a few other ones. One is this whole issue of climate anxiety, which people have, and therefore the whole positive action part in education, we call it handprint action right from the beginning. So for people to feel and know that they can make a difference. It's not just getting bad news after bad news and feeling depressed. So I think it is very important to bring action right from early childhood. And I think, we've got the foundation level, the preparatory level, the middle school and the high school. At each of these levels, action is possible. So I think that is a very important point I wanted to add. The other is this problem of mitigation and adaptation. Now, very large part of climate education, what people say, is all to do with mitigation. If you see even the actions, if you ask children, what do you do about climate change? They will talk about saving water, doing this, etc. But it's a very mitigation-oriented thing. Now, especially when you go to rural areas and you talk, there's only so much they can do in mitigation. Their footprint itself is very low. And I think they need to understand that adaptation is an equally big thing. Now, you also have this difficult task of saying that because you've adapted, doesn't mean that you don't mitigate or you don't worry about it. To think that, okay, now I've adapted. So it's very hot outside. Yes, but in my place, I've got an air conditioner, so I'm not bothered. That's not the point. The point is, yes, for some years, we will we can do it through adaptation, because things are not going to change for at least another 20, 30 years. But in the meanwhile, we have to do everything for mitigation. So that's another one. I think the different levels and how do you treat at different levels is very important. We ourselves have said that the middle school, standards 6, 7, and 8, is where you should really focus on the science of climate change. And the earlier years, we should inculcate many of the habits which are required. without necessarily knowing what the connection with climate change is. So when I say I switch off lights when I go out, don't waste, I don't know that that is actually helping climate change. I might know. And it's like in India, we learn many shlokas, the religious texts, without at that time even knowing the full meaning of it. We know it by heart, we sing it every day, but we don't quite, if someone says what is exactly the meaning, you probably learn about it later. So the good habits need to be inculcated right from the beginning. The link between that habit and climate change might be something they start understanding later. So don't use a plastic bag, single-use plastic bag, do this, don't waste. These are something else. Finally, I thought that assessment is a major problem because schools like to assess everything. And this is true not only of climate change, it's true of environmental education. That teachers tell us, look, all very well, we'll get them to do this, but how do I assess? And even if I assess, usually my child's paper, if it's a written paper, goes to another teacher. And who will tell them that? The story I often say is, what do birds eat? And this child who saw birds eating a cow outside, a dead cattle in drought, said birds eat cows. And the teacher said it's wrong, although you can actually see it from the window. So that is that problem. There is one last one I end up with, which is dissonance. That because climate change talks about lifestyles, you will have kids in the class and who you say don't do this, don't do, but their parents might be doing exactly that. How does the child deal with the fact that the parents are doing something and the child and the teacher is something else? Which is why, if you take the new education curriculum, also the parents becoming part of the education process and understanding what the school is trying to do is something which the teacher has to do, the school has to do, can't leave it to the child to have to figure out that I have to argue with my parents or I have to think my parents are the bad guys and the teacher says it's right or the reverse. So I think these are some of the issues. Thanks.
Thank you. And same now goes to Hita. Would you like
Thank
to?
you.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joyce. Yeah, in interest of time, I think I completely agree with what all of my fellow panelists have mentioned, and I won't reiterate those points. I think the couple of things that I'd like to add on here is one is really the approach with which climate change is taught. It's taught more as a subject that needs to be taught and less as something that we need to live. And I think that approach needs to change, and that can only be changed in two ways. One is, of course, we've mentioned capacity building of teachers. And of course, when teachers realize that this is beyond the classroom, this is beyond, like Dr. Sarabhai said, this is beyond an assessment, and this is something that they're going to live with for the rest of their lives, the approach to teaching changes. But second is also really how this is brought about in the outside world, right? Especially in India, in a country like India, environmental education or whatever you call it in schools is generally taken as a subject that is, you can do, either it's graded or it is a subject that you do just so that you get your final scores up at the end of the year. It's really not taken seriously in terms of the actual core content of it. Academics is limited to math, science, history, geography, and then everything else is something that you do at the side of it. So really, blurring the line between something that is academics and that is not, and I think this needs to change as well. And a few things can also happen is really trying to make it action oriented. A lot of environmental education, yes, of course, the science is very much important, because if you don't know the science, you cannot understand the seriousness of the situation. But at the same time, if it is not action oriented, for a child or even a teenager in university, there's zero interest to do this. So how do you make it action oriented for someone so that they can pick this up wherever they are in whatever level of their education or life that they're in? So that this can be translated directly into what can I do in my life? How can I then create a ripple impact for this? And of course, creating a holistic approach. Currently, climate change is still really spoken about either as global warming or as carbon emissions. We have forgotten that biodiversity is a key component, food is a key component, whereas so many other things which are interlinked with the whole picture of climate change, which can be solutions in addition to impacts of climate change, right? The food systems are impacted by climate change, biodiversity is impacted, but they're both solutions to climate change as well. So how do you create a holistic approach to education, going beyond carbon, going beyond global warming, and really putting in perspectives from different levels? So I think these are the few things. And the final point is really, this is something that we have to realize is not limited, like I said, it's not limited to the classroom. So teaching has to move out of the classroom. We cannot talk about climate change sitting in a classroom with a blackboard and a presentation. It can be done to a certain extent, but it has to move out of the classroom and it has to get hands-on. So really trying to put this in whatever actionable forms to make it as practical as possible is number one when it comes to climate education, and for that to take on for the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hita. I wanted to just quickly summarize some of the keywords and key thoughts from this first round of questions. Tushita was talking about teachers and increasing capacity level, how we need to contextualize education and to obviously provide the means and the resources for our educators and our teachers. Olivia mentioned the need to have both mitigation and adaptation strategies included in climate change education. And you spoke of your partnership with the Greening Education Partnership, as well as your work on MOOCs to bring climate education to the digital realm. Begur mentioned the idea, the central idea of the issue of how to scale up with quality. This is the larger challenge, and to contextualize all of the issues at hand. And you saw opportunities in the framework itself through partnership and policy. Kartikeya, of course, stressed the idea of stage-specific education. So children need educators need to impart knowledge specifically per the stage level, the science literacy assessment, and the dissonance. And this is also very much related to how stakeholders, different stakeholders, parents, elders need to be involved in partaking of the policy level development. And Hita mentioned very succinctly real-life linkages and how education from the classroom needs to also be activity-based, practical-based, and to concretize the relevance of climate education to one's life so that we understand and we learn and we can completely impart it easily. So now I'm going to go specifically to each panelists with a different question each. Again, I'm going to ask for your indulgence for 3 minutes. Let me start again with Tushita. What are the innovative ways in which we can integrate climate change in non-formal education? What are the innovative ways in which we can integrate climate change in non-formal education? Over to you.
Right. Thank you for that question, Joyce. Non-formal education is what we do outside of formal schooling system with curriculum, textbooks, predefined objectives. There are multiple ways of approaching NFE or non-formal education, and it obviously holds the ability to cater to a wide range of audience, I would say, different groups, different age groups, different people coming from different backgrounds. For me, I see some undeniable alignments or similarities between NFE and climate change education. Non-formal education and climate change education, in essence, both of them are need-based. They're specific. They have importance of, they talk about something of immediate value and importance. Climate change education talks about issues that are happening now and how you have to adapt to those. We have all been talking about how mitigation is important, but adaptation is also equally important. So climate change education equips students and empowers them to act today. And so does non-formal education, because it talks about something very, very specific that is of immediate importance to that particular group that we're talking to. So I will expand more on how governments and non-government organizations, because I work with the latter, can work collaboratively or independently on issues of climate change when it comes to non-formal education beyond school. And first of all, I think it's also important to lay down what is it that we are looking when we talk about climate change education. So of course, we're talking about empowering a group of students or individuals to take action, to be climate resilient individuals. But we're also looking to nurture skills and build skills that allow students to adapt to the realities that they're witnessing today. Whenever there's an extreme weather event because of climate change, schools are impacted, children are impacted, and they're the most vulnerable sections for obvious reasons, because they're more likely, 7 times more likely to witness such extreme weather impacts as compared to the generation before them. As we are progressing into the future, these extreme weather events are only going to increase, and children are going to bear the bitter end of it. So when we talk about climate change education, it needs to build their skills, but it also needs to equip them and help them manage in this ever-changing world with context to climate change. So I think I look at NFE as a beautiful opportunity of project-based learning for communities. So we're talking about groups that share an interest, that share a problem, and we're making interventions. And why I say project-based learning, I started out as a teacher, and during my course, we were always taught that you have to take concepts from concrete to abstract. You cannot just go into a classroom and say climate change, it's happening at the global level. Students should be able to make sense of it at their local level. So you have to first talk about issues surrounding them, for example, waste management, how waste goes out of their houses or schools. You have to talk about the vehicles they're using, the emissions that we're making, the industries are making. So you have to talk about all these issues that are closer to them, and then you have to go to the global level. So NFE could be interpreted as something that caters to particular groups that have a similar problem. So for example, and I would take examples from the school network that I have. We have a forum of schools that segregate, which has a number of schools across the country that are working towards becoming nearly zero waste. So what they do on ground is, and we as an organization empower them to manage their waste effectively. They come up with an action plan for 2 to 3 years, and they work towards it, managing all streams of their waste effectively as they proceed into the program. So examples like these not just help them build understanding, but they're also into action. So they are bringing about some measurable change. Assessment obviously is the center, but making a climate change education measurable, I think, is also equally important. So project-based learnings like these, am I overshooting or do I have time? All right, so I'll quickly close it. NFE, I think, shouldn't be seen as something that's mutually exclusive to school education, because I think it beautifully complements school education. We're talking about what happens when when children go home and they see a certain level of dissonance. That's when NFE could come into play. And I call this ripples of change. Whatever students learn in the school setup, when they go back home and take it to their community, that's an avenue where we could see the learning continuing. And I think I would like to close with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Olivia, are you ready? So, based on your global experience, what are some of the best case examples of integrating climate change education in schools? Based on your global experience, what are some of the best case examples of integrating climate change education in schools? Over to you.
Thank you so much. Well, what I'd like to share follows on very nicely, I think, from the what Tashita was just mentioning, particularly looking at how project-based learning as a format can involve multiple partners from the local community and focus on the concrete relevance of the real issues. And I've chosen 3 examples which show an adaptation focus to climate change education and how this focus can improve the quality of teaching and learning whilst improving education infrastructure and removing access barriers, and therefore fostering more relevant knowledge and skills within schools. And so therefore what I'm proposing is that there are ESD approaches which can address the triple crisis at once, the triple crisis being access, quality and relevance. So I've chosen 3 examples particularly, and the first one I want to share is I feel a relevant for access. It's a school that's based in Madagascar. It's in the southeast area, which has a tropical climate and a very hilly terrain, meaning that it is vulnerable to flooding and also soil erosion. They have problems with their rain fed farming, which mean that they then puts pressure on local forests as they're aiming to increase their area for farming into a more fertile ground. So there is a need for an adaptation of the types of vegetables and agricultural items that are grown. However, there's a lack of local awareness, skills and readiness to adopt these new crops into their farming practices. So the local eco schools program put in place a curriculum time during with sort of built-in curriculum time for farming, and they launched it with a competition where they asked the students to try to grow different varieties of vegetables supported by their parents. So they asked their parents for the seeds, and the parents also provided compost. And the competition was about what different types of vegetables can we produce. And over the term, these plots were taken care of by the students, also with support from their families, and it ended with a harvest, and they had a big community meal, and they had and they sold some of the produce to different community members, and so the project aims to help children to adapt, understand and learn adaptation measures based on the particular challenges that they're facing. And you can see that built right into that is a multidisciplinary approach where different community members are involved. So in terms of access, when there is a poor harvest, when there's flooding, there's increased sickness, increased absence from schools, and also has contributed in many places to early dropout. So this is I'm putting forward as a solution that we can add into this. So the second one is about quality, and particularly the example I've chosen is quality of learning environment in a European country. This is a school in Belgium where they have schools built out of concrete. The area is prone to drought in this area of Flanders. It's prone to drought, and also they experience heat stress. The concrete building blocks actually emit heat during the day. So in terms of a quality learning environment, they were experiencing struggles. In fact, what they did was quite a big infrastructural change, which involved many different members of the community and local government to design a new school grounds where they removed an enormous amount of concrete. 4,000 square meters of concrete was removed. There was tanks put under a sports field to catch water so that they had rainwater harvesting built in. But I think yes.
Sorry.
Am I running out?
A little bit, yes.
I'll wrap this one.
You want to talk about relevance as well, right? Go ahead.
I do. I'll wrap this on, but I just want to say that in introducing different aspects like vegetable gardening, chickens, bees, they were also able to bring in lots of new substantial infrastructure for problem-based and project learning. Last one, relevance, I'm going to go through it very, very quickly. This is a school in Tanzania where they have big issues. It's in a forest. They have big issues with deforestation and overexploitation. And what they did was, as part of their school curriculum, they introduced new projects with the local community, which were livelihood based. So banana farming, bee farming, and also introducing new fish ponds. So they were not only able to enrich their curriculum learning with some really good substantial projects, but also improve local livelihoods, which came back into improving attendance as well as the relevance and local perceptions of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. What we can do is perhaps we can ask Mobius Foundation to have your presentation, and then those that want it can either sign up later. I think we don't want to lose the information. Thank you, Olivia.
Okay, thank you.
Going now to Bigur, I would like to ask, what are some of the opportunities in India for integrating climate change in the education system? Can you cite some examples of ongoing initiatives on climate change education at the state level? So what are some of the opportunities in India for integrating climate change in the education system? And can you cite some examples of current initiatives on climate education at the state level? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, earlier presentation, I was trying to focus on the curriculum, the in-school part of it. Here I would like to mention few of the examples where one can, actually look at how systems can do a large-scale interventions which can affect climate change and solutions to address the climate change issues. Maybe one or two examples, especially in the interest of time. One is about in most of the states, through the part of Samagra Shiksha, there is an intervention called Comprehensive School Safety Program. And now this school safety program is an intervention that is implemented by the state governments in order to ensure that there is a protective learning environment at the schools level. Now, what does it mean? Now, when this, there are elements related to different levels of learning environment. Now, depending upon the situation, at times either due to floods or due to disaster, this gets affected. Now, that's related to climate change. Now, as this program was, implemented in almost in all the schools of Bihar, for example, I'll take an example. The elements of climate change were integrated into that, which was earlier related to only DRR, the disaster risk related. It was related to protection elements. But now with the advent of, challenges that's related to climate change, this intervention became much more comprehensive in terms of its implementation and rollout at the school level. Now, in close coordination with the communities there, the school management committees that which they call, they have designed and implemented these programs so that, the children's participation, the community participation, the teachers' participation come together and understand at the local level how and what challenges they are experiencing and ensuring to see that some of the change can be done at the local level. I can share this module, the experience, what they call is wagon wheel. Actually, on every Saturday, this program actually look at taking up one issue around a particular theme. It could be on climate related, it could be on protection, and then this gets rolled out. I would go to another example because now we are talking of with the systems which can do as well. The second one is maybe I'll take one from Uttar Pradesh. The recently when they organized the child convention, actually where 6,000 adolescent groups came together and submitted a charter of demands to the government principal secretary of what they have experienced and had challenges with regard to the climate change. How did this happen? Because they had what they call as youth Meena and Raju platforms. That's the words which has been given. It's basically adolescent platform at the school level. Now, they go into the communities, talk to the people, and also come up with their voices in terms of the challenges which they have experienced in terms of climate related things. Now, every school, as I said, that it's happened in around, 6,000 adolescent groups coming at the state level. But in these of upper primary schools, these children submitted those demands. One, of course, they addressed whatever they could do it at the local level. Second, in coordination with teachers and as well as the cluster coordinators, what they call block level, they could do it. But there were certain things which are systemic. There were certain things which needs a change in the policy guidelines or some of the things that needs to be. So they had a charter of demands that was prepared and it was submitted at the state level in the last Children's Day celebrations that happened in there. There's a report around that. It was so interesting to see and hear the voices of children and the experiences, what they were having, some of the problems, challenges, and what they could also had solutions around that. And these are now becoming the elements of integration in climate change. Now, I think this is something marvelous, which when we are talking of policy level, systems level, and also listening to the voices of children and bringing them how, downward trend, usually policy to practice we saw, but solutions which can be done, it can also have impact on policy change. So this is something one can look at it. Last but not the least, just to say one more thing, there are in Maharashtra, I think CE is also in collaboration with that, there were very concrete climate, lesson plans which were designed to help teacher educators in terms of addressing at the classroom level. And this could really make a huge difference in terms of one, as I said earlier, one at the classroom level curriculum for more sustainability, but also on the other interventions which, at the beyond the classrooms, at the community level, the other personal education and beyond education systems which can help support in making a huge difference for a system change. I think this will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Begur. Actually, your point on the demands of the youth or children, that's exactly it right now. To have children and the voices of the youth be part around the table in the process of policy development it's not new, but hopefully it can be taken up more prominently and really be recognized. And this leads me to our youth panelist, Hita. I would like to ask you your question, which is, what do you think are the key challenges that are facing the youth in terms of climate action? And what are some of the best strategies to engage youth in climate change through education? So what do you think are the key challenges that youth are facing and the best strategies to engage them in climate action through education? Over to you.
Thank you, Joyce. I think the best strategies to engage youth is one is to really, and it actually sort of links to the previous point the points that I made for the previous question as well, is to really make it understandable for them. And I think a lot of young people are now, with access to information, with social media, have an understanding of what is happening, but there is a vast majority of young people that still don't know what's happening, or rather, if they know about it, they've heard about climate change, but they don't understand the seriousness of the issue. They don't understand how quickly it's affecting our lives. And this is across countries, it's across spectrums of young people that I've worked with and interacted with as well. So even if they've heard, they know what climate change is, really making it, or sort of simplifying it to a certain extent. This is something that's happening today, and it's not going to happen in the next 50 years. I think that needs to change. And I think there is one, for young people who are actually taking climate action, who are doing whatever that they can at different levels, whether it is in education, whether it is at the policy level, whether it is grassroots work on the ground. I think there is still a massive lack of resources to engage young people. So while we do want youth to get engaged, it's how do you actually ensure that young people can get engaged? So really putting in resources to ensure that it reaches the right people, investing in young people, investing in youth-led organizations, in less formal sort of organizations that possibly not necessarily registered entities, really getting financial, but also capacity building, other training resources to the ground, to people who need it the most, who can then create a ripple effect, who can benefit from this and then build up on what they've received to then give back to communities that they're working with. So two different points. And I think the other final bit is to really put together and really sort of change the mindset in the lines that climate is not just activism, and also climate change is beyond just working on the ground. There are different levels of it. So really bringing in an aspect of green careers, talking about or showing how green jobs, what do they look like, how the market is changing, really giving an emphasis through the education lens on what are job opportunities, which will then create an interest in young people to then look into areas which are going beyond just the conventional that you see currently. So really putting in some time and effort to changing the approach to what climate change looks like, and what future of climate change can also look like.
Thank you, Hita. That's a very good point there, to have to stimulate more green skills and perhaps also startups and green industries, and not that, like you said, it's not just activism, it's not just field-based. Thank you. I've been told that we also have Miss Sunita Farkia on the line. Sunita, can you hear me? Let's see. I think, yes, she's coming online. I'd like to introduce Sunita
I'm
Farkia.
here.
Good to see you. So Sunita is the head of the Education Department of Education in Science and Mathematics from NCRET here in New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us. You missed a little bit of the beginning, but I'll go straight to asking you your specific question, Sunita. I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot immediately. So since you're coming from NCRET and we've just talked about the national curriculum that's being launched, could you explain to us, here the audience, how is climate change education being integrated within the curriculum in India under the new national curriculum framework, and how does it trickle down to each and every state? So how is climate change education being integrated within the curriculum in India under the new national curriculum framework, and how does it how is it being integrated at the state level? Over to you.
Thank you, Joyce. First of all, I apologize for not being there in the beginning of the session. Yes, for climate change, it is, I have heard people, all the experts speaking about it. It is a very important thing which we have to bring into the school education, because the young learner should internalize the problem and how we can get into it. This they have to learn actually. If I talk about the NEP 2020, there is the pedagogic design is 5+3+3+4 stages, and the climate change education, it has to be integrated in all stages from the beginning, because if we want that they should internalize, then it should be from the beginning of the education. So small activities may be given to very small children up to first 5 years. These are very important, where we can give them such kind of activities so that that will become their habit, and it should be hands-on, of course, and it should become their habit. It should not be the rote learning. NEP 2020 also says about it that it should not be a rote learning. It should be the understanding of the concept, and understanding of the concept should be there from the beginning. So this is one of the curricular aims of the given in the NEP 2020. Then second thing which is given in NEP 2020 is rootedness in India. So in rootedness in India, there is roots means all the tribal knowledge and all the ancient literature has to be seen, and climate change education was already there, so that has to be brought into the curriculum. Then multilingualism is also there. So through multilingual approach, the climate change education should be brought into the curriculum. Then integrating the vocational education. Vocational education should means we have to give, we have to emphasize the vocational education through promoting the entrepreneurship development. And so these are few points from NEP 2020, and now I come to the NCFSE, which has been released in 2023, just now in August last month, on 23rd it was released, and it is now in the public domain. And we can see various aims of education here. So in aims, we can see that in NCFSE, it says rational thought and independent thinking to be developed among the students. Why it is important? It is important, and NEP 2020 has directed, and NCFSE has taken that yes, it should not be there should be rational thoughts and independent thinking, so that the entrepreneurship development will be there. Such as, I will give you the example that if we are using the plastic bottles, what may be the replacement of these plastic bottles? Can it be from some naturally generated thing? So such kind of thinking should come over here. So in curriculum, it should be integrated. In curriculum, climate change education should be integrated. It should come as then second thing is health and well-being. So each and every student should see that the act of herself or himself should not disturb the environment. So this is the second thing.
Yeah.
And then
Sunita, I'm sorry, could you wrap up? I wanted to
okay.
Continue. Thank you.
Okay. So a very important thing, that is community participation, where students may go to community with project-based learning. Different projects may be given to the students. So students can go to community, and community can come to the students, and sometimes community awareness is also important. If we see, we have very good environmental education and informal education, under informal education to tribal communities. So that has to be integrated in the curriculum. So from and different science and social science, all content areas, this can be integrated.
Thank you very much.
These are my, okay. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, but thank you very much. Last question to Kartikeya. Since we started on integrating climate change, what are the approaches to integrate climate change education in schools here in India? In your opinion, what are the approaches to integrate climate change education in schools here in India? Thank you.
As I've said in another forum, that environmental education, the compulsory environmental education, gives us a great head start when we have to do climate change education, because India is already geared up for that. We've been training our teachers over 2 rounds of environmental education. So basic ideas of sustainability and everything else. Now climate change education comes on top of that. So it strengthens and further reinforces. You are also reinforced, as Sunita ji was saying, because of the new educational, the curriculum and the curriculum framework, the NEP, which also talks about this. The approach to connect to experiential learning. Experiential learning is also, hello.
Is anyone there online? If they are, could you mute yourself? Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
So I think we've already got the basic framework. As I said, assessment is one thing we've not really got organized, but many other things are already there. Provided we can now train the teachers and we can do things. I think the framework exists, which in many countries doesn't. So let us understand that we have a huge advantage. The other thing is that in India and through the constitution, we've always talked about duties and rights. And this is somewhat different from the European approach on rights-based activities. We have duties and rights-based activities. It's like your Kennedy's, what you can do for your country and what the country can, what the country can do for you. It is that approach. And I think we have to maintain that climate change is not only for which something we demand others to do something, because there is a lot you as an individual can do. And I think we need to do that. But I think in terms of approach, one thing which we have found very effective is if you give people not to think about the globe only, but think of a specific area. That area could be their school. So it could be CSC also has greening programs, so do many other organizations. Greening their school, can we fix many of these things in our school? Can we go to the community? We have a handprint lab program which takes a little area of the city or takes a village, that at least in this place, you will not have a leaking tap. You will not have wastes thrown away. You will have nobody using plastic. All the shops have agreed to do it this way. Can we take a little bit? And can you imagine every school and every college takes these little bits of the planet and tries to clean that up? Then you are getting a sense of a community action. So children and Micah, he was talking about, which we do with youth-based and school children-based community action to top the individual actions which we're already talking about, living our own lifestyle. But can we as a community come together and say, okay, this little part of the planet, can we see that it meets with the following? We usually count about 36 SDGs, 36 out of the 169 or whatever. We calculate are things which you can do, which a child can do. So at least these things don't happen in my area. That gives a tremendous confidence. I found that is a very powerful way in which we can do this.
Thank you very much. I'm hearing very similar thoughts: community, partnerships, local level, skills, green career. Again, Sunita was mentioning vocational education and the roots and the values of Indian culture. I think that's it. Mindset, urgency. These are all things that we've been hearing from the very beginning. And now it's the time to act, and every little thing counts. And again, like a jigsaw puzzle, if we all bring in our own little pieces, perhaps it might do some dent in this crisis. Now I have the option of first asking your concluding remarks from each one of the panelists, and then being very strict with the time, maybe asking only 2 questions from the floor. If I can do that, let me just have the concluding remarks. And I like that activism already, but please, Tushita, your concluding remarks in 1 or 2 sentences. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll try to wrap this up quickly. So we talk about integrating climate change into mainstream education. And I think we'd like to call it the new normal, what's happening around us, the environment. And in order to successfully integrate the new normal, there are a few non-negotiables that I think all of us will have to work with. moving a little away from our textbook and making space for real life context, because it's not going to work if our textbooks say that there's a normal seasonal cycle and what we are witnessing here is the driest August in probably 123 years. So making way for real life situations in the classroom, knowledge building of our teachers so that they feel empowered to take it into the classroom, and personalized journeys for maybe individuals, schools, or regions where they talk about the things that matter to them when it comes to their immediate climate and environment. So I think I'd like to close with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then you'll actually find that what I am feeling here in this part of the world actually resonates in another part of the world, even though perhaps it could be across the entire ocean. Yeah. Thank you. Next, Olivia, your last takeaways.
So thank you so much. Just very quickly, my overall concluding remarks, I think, would be to do with partnership and quality. So partnerships, I mentioned the MOOC that we're running with the Office for Climate Education and the Greening Education Partnership, and just say to use these as opportunities to join together. I've showed some case study examples that we developed in partnership with SEA India and the Centre of Climate Adaptation, and I think that in partnership with others in the room and beyond, the Greening Education Partnership gives us the opportunity to combine together, sort of unite behind some of the things that we've been talking about today. And in moving forward with climate change education, I'd also like to propose a new paradigm in the way we discuss climate education. We're used to a mitigation approach whereby we talk frequently about the role of quality education in enabling climate adaptation. But I think if we're to succeed, we should also talk about an adaptation approach where we talk about climate action and adaptation to enable quality education. So the mixture of those two together, I think, is something that maybe give a positive way forward to our partnerships in working on all of these issues together. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. When you mentioned about partnerships, I think we also need to partner with people we don't like, or partner with people that differ from us, because around the room, everybody understands climate change education is important. It's going to affect us. We're always there. How about talking to someone who doesn't care, someone who thinks that they care, but they can't do anything, and so they're apathetic. I think partnership is also about, getting those who may not be on the same boat to at least join the journey. I think that's that. Next, I wanted to go over to Begur.
Just three quick things, what I think something immediately could be done. One, there's a need for more learning resource materials in local languages, regional languages, and in the languages which are not there. So there's need to develop, generate, and the local context keeping in mind. That's something which we need to do it more. Two, probably more investment, but equity focused budgets, not just to particular areas, but to the remote geographical areas, or some of the areas where it's untouched or to the disadvantaged groups who are more affected. So the budgets needs to be generated, more investments around equity. The third, let's not look climate change in isolation. It's important. It's a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary part of thing, and also interministerial thing. Means departments of not just education, beyond education, forest and climate change ministry, different ministries, departments coming together, finding a mechanism to ensure harmonization and alignment to support children as well as. Thank you.
Thank you. I like the fact that I'm just nodding my head all the time. And now I'm here in the front. Please, if my head starts getting a bit weary, you understand, but I agree with everything that my sister UN agency representative is saying here. Totally, exactly. Next, I hand the floor to Hita, please, your last concluding remarks.
Thank you, Joyce. I think the only thing that I might want to say to conclude today is to look at young people as experts in their own ways, look at young people as agents of change, not just young people as people who need climate education, because I think that has to go beyond ages and sectors, and really invest in youth to take action. So give them the resources, give them the capacity, and help them cascade the effect that we want to build, because we can really drive the force with innovation, with passion, and with zeal. But sometimes if you're stuck in a job, that passion sort of sometimes is overtaken because you have other commitments to fulfill. So let young people, like, give them the resources and let them run free with it, so that you can build a future that we really want to build with each other.
Let young people do what it does best. Move fast, talk much, right? Thank you. Next, Sunita, I hope you're still with us. Can we have your concluding remarks?
She had to leave. She had to put in the tent.
She's left. Okay. Sir, Kartikeya.
I think just seeing the variety of what is being done around this room, everyone doesn't have time to say, I think we can do it. So first of all, I think we should feel that we are on a very good thing. There are so many different ways people have tried here. Methods are there. India is in a unique position. Leadership has given targets. So I think there is no excuse not to do quality education. Climate change, we've got a new education curriculum. So I think we should really put our heads together. I think Dr. Begu and everyone has talked about partnerships and others. How a national effort, we work in our separate things, but how we can work together, because this is a challenge which I think now one can at least see that we can reach a stage where people are, thanks to the horrible weather and everything else, I think they've done more to let everyone know that there's something amiss. They need solutions. I think we have to start with new areas, as you say, talking to farmers, for instance, farmer communities, talking to industry, talking to some of the directly affected, some of the regions. This morning we're talking about the Himalaya regions, where you have landslides and things. These are just not tenable. So I think we've reached a stage, on the one hand, because of all the educational efforts we have put in, but also because it's becoming so apparent that you can't hide it anymore. You can't say it doesn't exist, and that something needs to be done. So I think we've reached that stage. It is a tipping point. And I think what would be good is if today's meeting really gets to the other side of that tipping point, and we all start working together and actually doing something about it.
Thank you very much. They say necessity is the mother of invention. So yes, if there is a need, you've got to figure it out, or else you will never move. This may or may not include Jugaad, but yeah, that's for another topic. But right now, I'm going to go straight to the gentleman in the front row, because I know that he's been very excited to ask his question. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Yes. My name is Richard MacDonald. I'm a long-time educator, and I've recently stepped out of school leadership positions to try to find new ways as a new entrepreneur to create acceleration in next generation schools for a sustainable future. I would like, first of all, to start with a note of great optimism, which is, I think, the fact that a country of such diversity and size as India has managed to adopt and engage in having an obligation at all levels of education to address these urgent issues is brilliant. And I think that's worthy of applause, and particularly for those people who worked hard to get to that point. I'd like to make an observation which carries a little bit of caution within it, which is when we introduce new policies, there are a lot of people who rightly want to see that it's being done right. And what happens then is we start getting into an evaluation and an assessment process, which perversely can often kill off the joy, the purpose, and the engagement. And it becomes transactional. Teachers are stressed. Have I taught the syllabus? Have I covered everything? I'm anxious. My students are anxious now because they have this new subject and it's on top of everything else. and it can suddenly be just another subject, which means people say, I'm not good at climate science and things like this. So I think there is a caveat, is it mustn't just become another school subject, and it mustn't be victim of the same kind of assessment process we apply to all other learning. Because the great qualities of people that come out of schools are not the things we assess. The human qualities, the emotional qualities, the reason people become activists around environmental issues, they're built on a foundation of knowledge, but they are actually driven by our behaviors and our values. And I think there's a really important thread here for schools, is that if they're not teaching character education and they're not teaching values education, then all of this other climate it's information. It's transactional, not interactional. So that'd be my one appeal and challenge to educators, is to ensure that as we do this, it's interactional and that we don't assess it in the same way that we assess traditional forms of knowledge transfer.
Thank you. Yeah, life lessons don't always come with grades. One last question. Lady at the back.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My question is, being a teacher, I face problems in classroom that everybody rushes for completion of syllabus. Being in a CBSE school, I am into this profession from the last 8 years. And I have so many friends who are into this profession, and everybody faces this sort of issue. As I have learned here that that students need more hands-on experimental this exposure out of classroom. But being a teacher, when I teach, due to assessments, due to tests, it becomes very difficult for me to give them more experiential learning experience. So what should be done for this? This is my question. Thank you.
I'm glad that's not for me. Who would like to answer? Yes. You mean you agree? Oh, you want to answer?
In the beard, we have something known as a beard, where the teacher is trained, right? And she's only asked to pick up 2 subjects. So she picks up English and mathematics. So for 1 year or 2 years, whatever your program is, you continue to teach how to teach the subjects, which is a very wrong thing to do, because what we are doing is we are alienating subjects one from the other. So one has to integrate right from the time when we are learning how to become a teacher. So I always say environment is not maths, it's not science, it's not English, it's not history, it's everything. So environmental science has to be taught and integrated with all the subjects, and the methodology of teaching a teacher how to teach has to also change, because unless that level changes, a teacher is not competent enough to bring in another new subject. Like he said, he bring in a subject, but it's not a subject. Environment is a way of life. So it has to be taught in that. So everything right from, we don't change from a level, we have to start changing from the grass.
Thank you very much.
I would just like to add something to that. Because we work with teachers, ma'am.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, because we work with teachers, this is one issue that they all face, and they come to us with this. What I'm going to tell you now may be of help to you. So we suggest that, because obviously the last thing we want to do is introduce a new subject or introduce a new classroom for environment education. So what we encourage our teachers to do is to find avenues within their mainstream classes to teach these subjects. If they're teaching a topic on water, let's say, they could extend the same classroom to talk about water crisis, how the groundwater table is going down, and how extreme weather events are in fact increasing water crisis and water insecurity. So something that we suggest to our network teachers is to extend their existing classroom, no matter what the subject is, and includes a certain topic that relates to climate change. That could be of help because, of course, there's not enough time to take it individually. So maybe that could help.
Thank you very much. Without seeming like I'm doing self-promotion, but because I have CE here, I have UNICEF here, I have CSE, and I'm in Mobius's territory, I can say that our report will answer many of these questions. Please stay tuned for 18 October. Hopefully we will launch it. And but thank you very much for today. I know it's been very cut, but I have eyes telling me to get off the stage. But please, if I may, can we have an amazing round of applause of not only the colleagues online, but here. And thank you very much for your time. Goodbye. Okay. If I can just perhaps. Sorry, we're really doing this fast. No disrespect at all. I have one ready. Thank you very much. Yes.